Lesson 18.1, Task 4. Solve A times x plus b quantity squared equals c. The equation A times x plus b quantity squared equals c can be solved using a strategy similar to the one used to solve equations ax squared equals c. See the general solution method below. Alright, so we're still solving quadratic equations, and we're going to look and see how this equation would be solved. So since this is already partly factored, we still need to get rid of the a on both sides. So we're trying to get x by itself. So this first step is just a given. This is what we're given. And the next thing we need to do is divide both sides by a. So we're going to divide both sides by a. That's our division property. And then after that, you can see that we're going to take the square root of both sides. So that would be definition of square root. And then once we take the square root, we're still trying to solve for x, so we need to subtract b from both sides. So that would be our subtraction property of equality. Alright, so that just goes through the steps of showing how you would solve an equation of that form. Alright, so which restrictions on a, b, and c are needed to make the steps valid? Alright, so first of all, we do need all real numbers. A is not equal to 0, B not equal to 0, or C not equal to 0. So if we look back up here at this second step here, we are dividing by A. And remember, division by A is undefined. So A cannot equal 0. B and C can be 0, but let's see what the last one says. If C is not equal to 0, then A and C must have the same sign. Alright, so C is not 0, then A and C must have the same sign. Alright, so yes. And the reason that has to be the same sign is because 2 positives is a positive and 2 negatives is a positive. And remember, we're only looking at positive square roots because otherwise we would not have a real solution. So that one has to be true as well. Alright, complete the statements concerning the number of solutions to the equation a times x plus b quantity squared equals c. There are 2 solutions when c over a is greater than 0, so it means when it's positive. This is because when c over a is positive, it will have 2 square roots, one positive and one negative. There is no solution when c over a is less than 0 or negative. This is because when c over a is negative, it will have no real square root, no real solutions. All right, complete the statement. The value of b does not have an impact on the number of solutions of this equation. So right now, B will not matter or will not determine the number of solutions. It does matter. It doesn't tell you how many solutions. All right, so the steps for solving the equation 3 times x plus 1 squared equals 150. So this is in the form that we've been talking about above. So what are we going to do? So the first thing we're going to do is divide both sides by 3 to get rid of that 3. So we're going to have x plus 1 quantity squared equals 150 divided by 3 is 50. So that will be our division property. And then the next thing here says take the square root of both sides. So that's going to be the definition of square root. And then if you go from this step to this step, they have subtracted 1. So that's going to be our subtraction property of equality. And then once they subtracted 1, they're going to rewrite 50 as 25 times 2. So that's going to be write 50 as 25 times 2. And that way we have a perfect square here. So 25. Oh, wait a minute now. This is the product property of square roots. Yes, so the product property of square roots says that we can take this product and write it as 2 separate square roots. So that's called the product property. And then the last thing is we're going to rewrite the square root of 25 as 5 times and then keep the square root of 2. All right, so that just is going to show you the order of how to work that out, similar to what the steps are above for the general formula. So that's just an example to look at. All right, that's all for task 4. If you have any questions, let me know. Lesson 18.1, task 5. Solve real-world quadratic equations by using square roots. When modeling a real-world situation, you may use a formula that contains a squared variable. You can solve for that variable by using square roots. A cylindrical water tank for a fish farm is shown. The volume of the tank can be modeled by the formula V equals pi r squared h, where V is the capacity, r is the radius, and h is the height. What is the radius of this tank to the nearest tenth of a foot? All right, so if you look in here and you can see all those little minnows, all the little fish in the tank, but it has a volume of 370 feet cubed, and it has a height of 4.5 feet. And it looks like we are looking for the radius of this tank. So we're going to take the original formula, V equals pi r squared h, and we're going to substitute the two given pieces of information here. So the volume is 370, that goes in place of V, and the height is 4.5, so that will go in place of h. Pi is an irrational number, and this is just the symbol for pi, so that means we only have one variable r. So we're solving for r, which is the radius. All right, so in the steps here, we're trying to get r by itself, so we're going to divide both sides by 4.5 times pi, and that's going to leave r squared on the right-hand side. So we divide both sides by 4.5 times pi, and on the right side, that cancels everything but r squared. And on the left side, we're just going to leave it in this form for now. Then we're going to take the square root of both sides, which means we're going to have plus or minus the square root of all of this, equals r. And that's just definition of square root. And then if we type this in our calculator, we can see that that is the approximate answer. So let's check our answer here. So if we have goes second x squared, that's our square root button, and then we're going to do 370 divided by, and I'm going to put this in parentheses because I've got two things I'm multiplying, so I want to make sure I do order of operations here, and the parentheses will make sure that happens. So 4.5 times pi, all of that's under the square root, so I'm going to hit enter. And that shows us that that is approximately 5.1. So we're going to have plus or minus 5.1 equals r. All right, and so this is the exact solution. This is the approximate solution. What property justifies the step with the question mark next to it? All right, so if we look up here, we went from this step to this step. What did we do? So we divided both sides by 4.5 times pi. So that is our division property of equality. And then it says choose the correct number and words to complete the statement. The value of r is not reasonable in this situation, so that would be the negative value, because the radius of the tank must be a positive number. Remember, radius represents the distance from the center to the edge of the tank, so it has to be a positive number. So that means the radius is approximately 5.1 feet. So it says explain why the expression, the square root expression, is considered the exact solution. All right, so this is the exact solution because this is what we get in the final step before we have rounded at all. And so this is the approximate solution because that is what we do after we have rounded the answer. All right, that's all for task 5. If you have any questions, let me know.